7 centuries of war. A people divided, conquered, and exiled. Will the Israelites ever be delivered? Has God forgotten his promises to Israel? A lot happens in the 400 years between the Old and New Testaments. But before we dive into the New Testament, let's go back even further to look at 3 major developments between the time of Assyrian rule and the birth of Jesus Christ. As we understand what's going on, we'll understand a lot more about the people and stories we're about to study. This was a rough patch for the kingdoms of Israel and Judah, who'd neglected their training as the Lord's champion people.
In this corner, God's very own Kingdom of Israel. Looking a little flabby after training in Baal's Golden Calf Gym. The contender, the mighty Assyrian Empire. Israel comes out swinging with the Covenant Breaker maneuver. On itself? What are they thinking? There goes the Kingdom of Israel. But what's this? Judah steps into the ring just in time to pull a Hezekiah and holds up a shield of faith. And the Assyrians are suddenly on their knees. Uh-oh, there's the tag, and Babylon takes over. They can party, but can they fight? Whoops, Judah dropped its shield. Whoa, there goes Solomon's temple. Devastating move. Judah is on the ropes. Oh no, they've been carried out of the ring. But here comes Persia's Cyrus the Great. He throws Babylon out. And in an unexpected move, he lets a remnant of Judah return. Unbelievable! Cyrus is letting them rebuild their temple. A strategic move by Cyrus. The Jews aren't fighting him now. Ooh, entering the ring, undefeated champion Alexander the Great. Trained by Aristotle, who was trained by Plato, who trained under Socrates himself. Folks, this is all Greek to me. Youch! The Jews are being sandwiched in an epic power struggle. Wait a minute, what's this? A fashion show? Are they getting hypnotized? No, they're getting Hellenized. Well, I guess if you can't beat them, join them, right? But who's Helen anyway? In Greek mythology, the only survivors of a flood, much like Noah's, repopulated the world by throwing stones that turned into people. The first stone became their son, Helen, believed to be the ancestor of all true Greeks. As Greece takes over, Israel is on the verge of completely losing their identity as God's chosen people. The Jews aren't putting up much of a fight until the Greeks take it too far by defiling the temple in Jerusalem. But the Jews never got Zeus to it. Judah responds with a Maccabean revolt. Ooh, but they take their eyes off the prize. And suddenly, Rome, heavyweight champion of the ancient world, sweeps in, captures Jerusalem, and sets up an evil puppet king named Herod. Yes, the same Herod who killed all of the babies of Bethlehem, hoping to murder the prophesied Christ child. Kind of like how Pharaoh killed Hebrew babies to prevent their deliverer Moses from freeing Israel. Whew. So that catches us up on the wars, and that's the short version. So why does all this drama matter? Because with Israel being conquered by so many different nations, they'd become almost unrecognizable as God's people. And in some ways, they could no longer recognize their God. What else did Israel lose in the battle? Bye-bye, Hebrew language. Hello, Aramaic and Greek. With all of this foreign occupation, fewer Jews speak or read Hebrew. Most speak Aramaic because it was the common language of the region that survived the many conquests. Important laws and the writings of the educated class, such as original books of the Bible, are in Hebrew and Greek. So, the common people depend more and more on their leaders to tell them what to think and how to think about God's laws. The Jews were conquered many times and most couldn't read. Maybe they had an excuse for not studying their scriptures. Do we? Speaking of studies, it's your first day of school, and it's time to decide what clubs to join. The Hellenization of Jewish culture gave rise to new sects of the Jewish faith. During this time, people were asking themselves, how Greek can I be and still be a faithful follower of God? Now, the Sadducees were Jewish leaders, high priests, aristocrats, and merchants who adopted many of the Greek ways. Friendly with the ruling government, they shared the Greek beliefs that there were no angels or resurrection, that the soul left the body after death and continued to exist in some form, but with no reward or punishment in the afterlife. Maybe that's why the idea of a savior seemed absurd to them. And remember this,
Greeks believed that evil spirits or angry gods caused diseases. Now, at the time of Jesus, a Sadducee named Caiaphas was the president of their ruling group who plotted to have Jesus killed. Talk about having enemies at the top. But the Pharisees rose up in reaction to the sellout Sadducees. They thought a million rules and new laws would preserve the Jewish ways. The law became their god. This overcorrection led to an inability to recognize revelation and their own Messiah. But not all of the Pharisees were against Jesus. Later on, we'll meet Nicodemus, a Pharisee and a member of the Sanhedrin who became a follower of Christ. Now, the scribes were literate Jews from all the sects, often lawyers who interpreted the law their own way. They weren't all bad, but the people, unable to read the scriptures themselves, now looked to these educated scribes rather than to prophets. The Gospel of Mark was written by Peter's scribe, Mark. Finally, the Zealots were an aggressive political sect of Jewish nationalists who fought for the Jewish people and their religion, often resorting to violence. They despised Jews who sought peace or cozied up to the Roman authorities. One of Jesus' lesser-known apostles, Simon, was a zealot. And remember the rebel Barabbas, who the people wanted to free rather than Jesus? Yeah, he was probably a zealot. With so many strong influencers, it must have been a confusing time for the Jews. Of course, today, influencers are everywhere, vying for our attention. So, how can we still find truth and be true disciples of Christ with so much worldliness and so many destructive philosophies around us? Well, He invites us to come and to follow Him. So, let's commit ourselves to studying His mortal life and let our greatest friend be our ultimate influencer. And so, the stage is set for the world to be rocked by the coming of Jesus Christ. With no worldly power of His own, born in the most common of circumstances among a conquered people who'd forgotten who they were and who their Messiah would be. Satan's perfect storm raged in an attempt to make it impossible for Jesus to complete His mission. But He alone can calm the storm. Only a miraculous ministry, prophesied for thousands of years, could change the world against all odds. Will prodigal Israel find their way back to God? One day, the darkness begins to be pierced when an old man working at the temple gets a surprising message from an angel. A son will be born to him and his wife, a son that will be named John.